Hello, my name is Bohdan Nahaylo. I'm the chief editor of Kyiv Post. I'm very happy today to welcome one of the bright stars of Ukraine's new generation of artists, directors, creative people who are really setting the tone and encouraging the younger generation here to delve into the past of Ukraine, but also to modernize Ukraine's culture in this difficult time of war. And I'd like to welcome Oleksandr Khomenko.
Hello.
Alexander,
Yes.
rather than me talk about you, you tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm 23 years old. I'm a director and a scriptwriter. I really adore Ukrainian literature and Ukrainian culture. I fancy it more than anything, I believe, in the world. Thus, I write stories about Ukrainian literature, stories that are intended to promote Ukrainian literature among young audiences.
Now, I had the good fortune of meeting you last week. There was a press conference at which a teaser was shown for a film that is about to appear in Ukrainian cinemas. And you, I believe, are the director, the maker of the teaser.
Yes.
Please tell us what this project is about and why it's so important.
The film is called The Slovo House. If some members of the audience don't know that, the Slovo House is actually a building in Kyiv where many Ukrainian poets and writers and playwrights and even theatrical director Kurbas lived all in one building, like this, for example.
The Soviets put them all in one building at the beginning of the 30s,
Yes,
when
yes.
they moved the capital from Kyiv to Kharkiv.
But actually, at first it started as a really good thing because it was a free apartment for writers. It was a great opportunity for how the people of modern era would say, how to say, when you meet each other on the conferences, you know, and social networking. So a good opportunity
yes.
for networking. But then every second writer in that building was shot to death by the Soviet regime. Rostislav Semkev, a great Ukrainian culturologist and a person who writes books about literature, he actually wrote a very sad sentence in his book. He said, I don't know whether in our whole history of civilization there was another day, it was the 5th of November, another day in the whole human era when so many talented people were executed in one place.
And that Ukrainian Renaissance cultural is called the executed Renaissance.
Yeah.
Because of that.
The culture was blooming. In those 20 years maximum, those writers of the executed Renaissance had Сосюра, Тичина, Куліш, Хвильовий, Євген Плужник, Михайло Семенко, the list goes on and on.
In other words, these were the creators of the modern Ukrainian culture in the 20s and early 30s, who, I'm setting the scene for our audience, who round about the time of the Holodomor are themselves crushed by the Stalinist system.
They precisely chose to go with the European way of writing. The Ukrainian literature had this discussion in the 20s whether we should write like the Russians, about the inside of our souls and
Dostoevsky's, Tolstoy's.
Or should we go to something experimental, something weird, European.
Avant-garde Europeanism.
Yeah. And the Ukrainian literature, the discussion was won by Mykola Khviliovy and his friends. And the Ukrainian literature decided to go Western. And for that, it was executed by the Soviet regime.
And Khvilovy's motto was away from Moscow.
Yes, away from
Europe.
Moscow. Give us Europe.
So relevant
precise.
Today,
Yes.
relevant in this situation.
We even start our concert that we have about the executed Renaissance with the words that in 2014, here on Maidan Nezalezhnosti, there was shooting as an answer to the nation's choice, a choice that was once proclaimed by Mykola Khviliovy, away from Moscow, give us Europe. So, and those tragic events are all happening in the film by Taras Tomenko called Budynek Slova. I really cherish this film, even before I had the opportunity to work on the trailer, on the teaser, and it happens not so often in our profession, that even before I had the opportunity to work on it, I was in love with the project. So when the people from that film turned to me and said, well, because of your Mood project, I think you'd be the right person to create the trailer for this film, I was really happy because I was following that film for half a year before that.
Now, I was struck by how graphic and realistic that trailer, that teaser is. I mean, this is a very modern film for Ukraine. If anything, it reminded me of, say, Italian cinema of the 50s or Polish realistic cinema.
Noir,
It
also
shows
noir
the
films.
writers as real human beings with
Yeah.
alcohol, sex, everything else, not traditional themes in Ukrainian cinema.
Well, we had some monstrous films about alcohol and sex, about some people on the weddings, about some poor class people in some small cities, racketing. And this theme actually was almost as a cancer for Ukrainian cinema since the independence. And now this film, the Khomenko Будинок Слова, the Slovo House film, is not about writers as alcoholics, but this film creates the stage for real life writers, as you say. And yeah, of course they drank, they had sex, they joked at each other. The problem with the old way of teaching is that the writers were born, they wrote their genius material, then they went to sleep, to wake up again and to write genius material. It doesn't work like that. Even the chief editor of Kyiv Post probably has some time to...
No, don't pry into my secret life, please. Yeah. I have to keep a respectable face.
But
like
I mean,
all of these people did. But their tragedy was that they were intermingling very talented, creative people, but they were being crushed by this totalitarian machine, and their leader, Khvylovy, committed suicide, shot himself in 1933.
Yeah, Mykola Khvylovy, I think it's a spoiler, but like as every spoiler, Titanic sinks. Sorry, everybody. Yeah, so the Khvylovy actually kills himself. That was sort of a warning for, imagine Khvylovy, if we kind of compare two realities, nowadays and the 30s, Khvylovy was a person who, who probably, to compare to nowadays, who saw Kharkiv being occupied by Russians, who saw Russian troops again near Kyiv. So there was a person who saw the future as he thought, and the future looked horrible to him. Yeah. And thus he shot himself. It was it's a Greek play actually act, but it happened in real life. He gathered all his friends, he joked, he laughed, he read his poetry, they drank wine, and after like 6 hours of this evening, his friends like, what are we doing here? Why are we here? He said, I'm gonna show you how an ideal Soviet writer should look like the writer of modern era. And he goes to another room, and with the voices of his friends as the backdrop, he puts a bullet to his skull. And then the friends enter, see him like on the table, and see a suicide note. The note proclaims, my dear friends, I'm in love with life. I cherish life. I enjoy every day I live. But unfortunately, I am the one who should answer for Yolovy's generation, for this whole generation. And long live the Communist Party. He finishes his note. And many people, even in cultural, spheres of Ukrainian scientists and people who are connected to the literature, they thought that by finishing the note on "Long live the Communist Party," Khvylovy proves that he's a commie. Like it's irony. It's
irony, sarcasm.
Yeah, it's a very painful irony.
Yes.
And by thus he tried to warn, his friends.
Yeah, a bit like George Orwell later with the "Long live Big Brother," etc. Look, but this approach has an impact on young people who perhaps didn't know too much about the 30s, the 20s, even about the 60s when there was another revival of Ukrainian poetry, culture, etc. So are you specifically targeting the young generation?
I think that we live in a wonderful time because the war is happening, and
wonderful time with war.
I'm not
finished. Sorry.
Yeah, because the war is happening. We see the rise of poverty. We see the rise of really harsh things that are happening to cities all around Ukraine, Odessa, Kryvyi Rih, Zaporizhia. But what's one of the most dynamic businesses right now in the capital? Bookshops. People resort to reading books. People resort to reading. Actually, Serhiy Zhadan, a Ukrainian poet, he is planning to gather Palats Sportu. This is one of the huge, like the next big thing is the stadium, I believe. It's 10,000 people or 5,000. And so the nation, our nation, has grown to the state when poetry can gather 10,000 people in one place. And answering your question, whether our content of Mur or this film is for the young generation or the adult generation, I think this content, this new explosion of Ukrainian, culture, is for the nation that's finally awakened.
Explain what you mean by Mur, the name of your organization.
Mur is actually, it means wall. It's the wall, and we created that name when I was having a dinner with my father. And it was the beginning of the war, the early stage, the summer of 2022. And he said, you know what we should do? He was a big fan of Game of Thrones. He said, you know what we should do? We should build a giant wall like on the north. And so those Russians shall be living on the other side, like the barbarians they are. And the normal civilized world shall live on the other side, and we'll be the night watchers, the night keepers and something.
Yes.
So, and I really liked that metaphor, and I was like, oh my God.
So the Mur is,
yeah.
if you want, a barrier.
Yeah.
A barrier to barbarism.
Yeah, the barrier that separates, the Russian culture and Ukrainian culture, because actually before the full-scale invasion, unfortunately, we had this problem in our nation that we compared our writers with the Russian ones, So like we had this poet, and it's like the Russian this poet.
Pushkin.
Like this playwright.
Yesenin.
Oh, it's just like the Russian this writer. And actually it was a huge problem. Now it's almost gone.
Yes.
Thanks God. And the bookshelves are opening all over the country.
But wasn't there a writers' organization in the 20s called Mur?
No, it was actually in the 40s and the 30s. It was created by Ivan Bakhriani.
Oh, that's already in exile.
Yeah, the one who fled to Germany.
And wrote about that period of persecution.
Мистецько-український рух Івана Бахряна.
Look, our time is running out. Future plans. So Mur, the film is coming out, the teaser is out, and we will show our audience the teaser.
My honor.
What plans do you have for the future? How are you going to promote your work in this film?
As I mentioned, we are planning to stage our album, Ty Romantika. This is an album about Ukrainian writers, almost like a musical, and we're staging it in Żołtnевий Palace.
The October Palace.
In October Palace, yeah.
Where, ironically, many famous people were killed, were shot.
Yeah. Mikhail Semenko and Mike Johansson were killed there. And you imagine, this is the ground floor, and then you're sitting below. You have the place where those writers were executed, and now you see their story. I would gladly invite you, but unfortunately, all the tickets were sold in 15 hours. So.
Well, that sounds good. I wish you all the very best, and it's so refreshing during this gloomy, dark period of war that there are people bringing light and encouragement, and particularly to the younger generation. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm Bohdan Nahaylo, signing off for Kyiv Post. Thank you for watching us.